I do see, my dear Ion, and I'm going to show you what I think that means. Really. And as I said just now, this is no art in you to speak well about Homer. No, some divine power is moving you, such as there is in that stone which Euripides called the Magnesian, but most people call it the Herculean stone. This magnet attracts iron rings, and not only that, but puts the same power into the iron rings, so that they can do the same as the stone does. They attract other rings, so that sometimes there's a whole long string of these rings hanging together, and all depend for their power on that one stone. So the muse not only inspires people herself, but through these inspired ones, others are inspired and dangle in a string. In fact, all the good poets who make epic poems use no art at all, but they are inspired and possessed when they utter all these beautiful poems. And so are the good lyric poets. These are not in their right mind when they make their beautiful songs, but they are like courtibants out of their wits dancing about. As soon as they mount on their harmony and rhythm, they become frantic and possessed, just as the bacchanant women, possessed and out of their senses, draw milk and honey out of the rivers. So the soul of these honey singers does just the same, as they say themselves. The poets, as you know, tell us that they get their honey songs from honey founts of the muses, and pluck from what they call muses' gardens and muses' dells, and bring them to us, like honeybees, on the wing themselves like the bees. And what they say is true, for the poet is an airy thing, a winged and a holy thing, and he cannot make poetry until he becomes inspired and goes out of his senses and no mind is left in him. So long as he keeps possession of this, no man is able to make poetry and chant oracles. Not by art, then, they make their poetry with all those fine things about all sorts of matters, like your speeches about Homer. Not by art, but by divine dispensation. Therefore, the only poetry that each one can make is what the muse has pushed him to make. One ecstatic odes, one hymns of praise, one songs for dance or pantomime, one epic, one satiric iambic. In every other kind, each one of them is a failure. For not by art do they speak these things, but by divine power. Since if an art taught them how to speak well in one kind, they could do it also in all the other kinds. Therefore, God takes the mind out of the poets and uses them as his servants. And so also those who chant oracles and divine seers, because he wishes us to know that not those we hear, who have no mind in them, are those who say such precious things, but God himself is the speaker. And through them he shows his meaning to us. A very strong piece of evidence for the argument is Tyrinkios of Challis, who never made one poem which a man would think worth mentioning except only the hymn of praise which all the world sings, well nigh most beautiful of all lyrics, really and truly a godsend from the muses, as he calls it himself. Here, most of all, I think God has shown us, beyond all dispute, that these beautiful poems are not human, not made by man, but divine and made by God. And the poets are nothing but the God's interpreters, possessed each by whatever God it may be. Just to prove this, God purposely sang the most beautiful of songs through the meanest of poets. Don't you think I speak the truth, my dear Ion?